And just want to tap into a few things about, you heard the podcast title, the reactive versus proactive leadership. And I want you just to kind of go back to a moment that maybe happened last week, maybe something that you were fully focused on one thing, you were in a calm state, you were just in what we would call flow. And then something happens, you get a notification, you get an email, maybe you even get that moment, this like, oh shit, that I didn't do that, I didn't get that from that type of person. And all of a sudden you notice that your state of being is completely shifting. That calm, that regulation went fully out the door. It went to you feeling a little stressed, super focused, you feel your heart rate's going up a little bit, and the moment that body feeling, that calm has just kind of left your body. And this is something that happens to so many of us leaders. And what I'm going to teach you in this podcast episode is first, like, how do you identify? Are you in the reactive leadership state? Are you more in proactive leadership? And how do you shift your state? Because this is something like most techniques when we think about massive change is the first goal is full awareness of where are you currently, and where are you currently isn't that is your full default mode all of the time. You can go in and out of these states. And the goal, obviously, is to be much more in the proactive leadership state than the reactive, and is to be able to identify when you are moving into reaction and getting out of that as fast as you can, but from a calm, regulated state, not from a fast, reactive state. So let's dive into what actually is reactive leadership. So reactive leadership is response-driven. You're operating from what's already happened, a problem, a complaint, a crisis, a missed number. And the energy that you're bringing here, it's defensive, often urgent, and the decisions are really getting made under pressure. And the irony here is that oftentimes the leaders, so that's you, are themselves the ones that are creating the deadline and that pressure. And that feeling and that energy gets completely pushed down to the team. So all of a sudden, your modal operating system is now shifting not only from leadership to your team. And then that is going to create the environment, the ecosystem, the culture of this. So here's what's really important to understand is that sometimes reactive leadership creates the pressure itself. The leader feels behind, so they're creating the urgency. And then that urgency gets pushed down to the team. So everybody's running and nobody is actually sure who decided to start running or why. And when that is the operating system for every day, that's going to cause a lot of physical and emotional stress for the team and for the leader. Now, sometimes having this happen in certain instances when there really is a crisis, this is not bad. Sometimes we have to respond fast, but when it becomes the default mode, this is when you want to make sure that you are aware that there needs to be a change. Because when we think about our emotional state, reactive states are sympathetic. When we think about the nervous system, when we're in the sympathetic state, sympathetic stress, right? So this is going to be your body is going into a sympathetic response here. So, where's the lion? How are we going to run as fast as we can? My prefrontal cortex, my decision-making part of my brain is not operating because now all of a sudden I'm stressed. Like, this is not leadership. This is survival. Versus proactive leadership, this is intention driven. You're shaping conditions before they become problems. You're asking, what is it that needs to be created to help us get to where we want to go? This is actually thinking ahead. Where in this ecosystem needs attention, needs to be solved, needs to be fixed. And the state itself is grounded, it is calm, because decisions are made from clarity, they're not made from panic. They're made before the pressure arrives, which requires something that reactive leadership doesn't. It requires this tolerance for uncertainty. That uncertainty is okay. We're okay to play in this liminal space. We're not afraid of uncertainty, and we're going to be able to evaluate uncertainty all together. And I want to talk to you now about the science, because in both cases, we are operating in different emotional states. Our nervous system is operating in different states. So these are not personality styles. These are not mindset categories. They're actually physiological states. So reactive states map directly into the sympathetic nervous system. That's where it's activating. And we know that there is a threat response. When your body perceives danger, real or imagined, it's moving, it's mobilizing, it is here to help you. This is when cortisol rises. But the thing is, when cortisol rises, our cognitive bandwidth narrows. So you're not able to actually access creative or strategic insight, those nuances that actually make your leadership the strongest. Your brain is literally optimized for survival. Proactive leadership, it requires what we call the ventral vagal axis. So this is a term from polyvagal theory developed by Stephen Porges. And this is this idea of felt safety. This is when you know you're here, you can think long term. So when you're in that flow state, you are in the parasympathetic state. Your body, your mind, all feels calm and safe. So you're able to take considered risks. You can hold complexity without actually complicating it at all or even collapsing it. And so what I want you to recognize is that also when these decisions are going to be made, and I'm going to give you some examples of how do you know where you fall, is actually what is happening with your body. If you notice, so becoming much more aware of your body and becoming aware of when you are in an emotionally dysregulated state, how you feel, where you feel that in your body, some of these are the first ways that you can actually start making a shift. So let's get into actually where you fall. So the funny thing is, and most leaders, we think that we're always operating in the proactive state. And my leadership is proactive. We're getting ahead of the problem. But calling a meeting to get ahead of something that already exists, by definition, is actually reactive, because the thing actually had already happened and now we are reacting to it. Building a strategy from your competitor's move, it's strategic, but we're reacting. We're not thinking ahead. We're not creating. We're not innovating. We're not creating that blue ocean strategy. And even revising your pricing because of how the last quarter went, it's considering data, but it's reactive. So proactive leadership requires tolerance for uncertainty. You're making moves before the data is fully in, which takes a different type of nerve than reacting to what's already clear. So let's get specific. Here are the signs of each state, not as judgments, but just as data points for you to look at honestly. So reactive states, decisions feel urgent even when they're not. You're checking numbers, you're checking things to feel better, not to plan. You're saying yes to avoid the discomfort of saying no. Your decisions shift based on how the week, the month went. And you feel behind even when nothing is technically wrong. So a hyper-vigilant state here. Versus our proactive, you're making decisions based on criteria that you have set in advance, that you've planned for. You can sit with a business question without needing to solve it immediately. Your boundaries are being held regardless of what's actually happening externally. And you're investing in business and wealth opportunities based on direction, not on desperation. And so when you think about that, proactive leadership is very clear on what is in our control, and those things that are out of our control, we've already imagined what those things are possible, and we have a plan, and we are okay with figuring it out together. Versus reactive, so the obvious one is the weather. We can't control it. And getting clearly in a dysregulated state because we don't have the umbrella when it's raining. Instead of thinking, okay, well, how do we dance in the rain? Because you know what? We already know where we want to go. Let's go there. And this is just a little minor hiccup in where we want to go. And the most important thing here is that these are states. These aren't who you are. This is not a defined thing, right? These are actually emotional states. And this is one of the most important shifts that I want you to be able to make today. So you're not a reactive leader. You're not a proactive leader. You move between these states constantly, every single day. And you want to be able to move to them because that allows you to lead. So the goal is never to be reactive. This is like physiologically not impossible. And honestly, it's not even desirable because sometimes we do need to react. But the goal is to recognize which state you're in before you make a significant decision. The goal is to recognize, okay, I'm operating fully right now in this state of reactivity. Am I actually making a clear and decisive decision? Or can I take a pause? Can I ground myself? Can I become more regulated and take some time to actually figure this out? Because here's the truth, the awareness itself is the intervention. So the moment that you take notice to this, I'm in this reactive state, you're already partially exiting it. It's becoming aware of how you yourself are operating. So all of a sudden, you are beginning literally the process of regulation by calling out exactly what you're seeing. I am right now operating in a state where I'm feeling dysregulated. I am operating in a state where I am being reactive. I want to operate in a state that is proactive. So naming that is that first actual requirement there. And the most empowering piece about this is that the more that you practice catching the reactive state and returning it into a proactive one, the shorter the loop becomes over time, right? So your leadership continues every day. And so even within the day, we go from the reactive to the proactive, the reactive to the proactive. So what our goal and intention here is to build that neuroplasticity. You're literally rewiring what is your default. So you're shifting your default, you're shifting your baseline so that recovery becomes faster, that you return to becoming more of, where you want to be, which is in that more regulative, proactive state. And so how do you maintain proactive leadership when you actually need to react? Reaction is good. And this is the exact right question, because proactive leadership doesn't mean you don't react. It means that you return. So let me give you 3 distinct directions that shift how you think about this. So reacting versus being reactive. Reacting is an action. I am doing the thing. Being reactive is the state. So reaction is the action. So, something happened, I'm reacting to it. Being reactive is a state you're operating from without even knowing it. So a proactive leader can respond quickly to something urgent and then return to intention. And even better, when that urgent thing happens like that, you take the moment and say, wow, this is something urgent. How do I now make a decision based off of the information that I know from a calm and grounded and regulated state? The difference isn't speed, and recovery is your leadership skill. So how fast you can actually get back to a regulated state is now the game that you're playing. So when you're facing forward and you see something that's like, wow, okay, this seems intense, this is happening. What your goal is to be able to call that out and to then ground yourself and come back to it. It's not that you're not going to get knocked off the horse. You're about to get knocked off the horse several times. But the goal is the emotion and that intensity that happens when you're getting knocked off that horse. That's what's going to dissipate because you've trained yourself, you've trained your brain in an ability to actually get out of that. And the third one is pre-deciding what your response is going to be. So when you really think about true proactive leadership, it means that you've already thought through your most likely reactive triggers. You've already mapped them out, you've already planned them, you've already become aware of them. And so the goal now is, because your decisions are going to hold based off of what you've already planned, that your decisions are holding because you decided that before somebody objected, that your client criteria holds because your decision-making criteria holds because you've already said it when the thing that you've anticipated has already happened. So when the moment comes, you're not deciding this under pressure. You're just executing a choice that you've already made in a clear and grounded and calm state. And I want to show you actually what does this look like. And so let's make this truly real. And I'm going to walk you through some examples that could happen in 3 different areas. So your self-leadership, your business, and your money decisions. So your self-leadership, think about energy and capacity. So I'm going to give you examples for each of these. So energy and capacity. Reactive is that you only rest when you crash. When your body told you, oh my God, burnout happened, you have a huge headache, a migraine, you're completely exhausted. So your body actually had to force you to stop. Reaction with your energy and your capacity. Versus proactive, you build recovery in before you need it, because you know your capacity ceiling. So you know that you've set boundaries, you've set schedules, you've set exactly where you need to take those breaks because you're aware of your own capacity. Emotions and decisions, reactive. You make a big life, a big business decision in the middle of an emotional spike when you're literally feeling all of the emotions. You're feeling frustration, you're feeling fear, you're feeling excitement, and the emotion is freaking completely driving. Proactive, when those emotions have completely, like when they flood your system, what that means, and you know and have understood completely that we all have these emotional waves. Our emotional waves are very different depending on who we are, our architecture of our bodies, of how we deal with things. And you've given yourself permission to wait. You're not suppressing anything, but you're saying, no, wow, I'm feeling the emotion right now. I'm going to feel that emotion. I'm not making a decision here. And you have, because what we've been taught for the longest time is to literally just push our emotions away or feel them and then make that decision immediately. No, we're allowing ourselves to actually have that emotional wave. Your identity and your self-talk, your self-concept is being shaped completely by external factors. The proactive is that you have already this anchored sense of who you are and what you're building that doesn't shift every time things fluctuate. In boundaries, reactive boundaries look like you set a boundary after it's been crossed repeatedly. You're always recovering from that yes, that should have been a no. Proactive is that you've actually defined your boundaries from a regulated state in advance. Your boundaries really don't shift, they don't really change, and you can say with calm, grounded certainty, no. And learning and growth. So reactive is that when you are needing help, when you're asking for information, when you're doing the Google, the Claude searches, it's because something's broken. That pain is the only teacher here. Proactive is that you're already investing in the things that you have known on your roadmap that are the things that you want to work on and that you need to work on. And if you're a parent, this one is especially for you. So reactive parenting is when your child's behavior is regulating you rather than you holding the container for them. The proactive version isn't that you're going to control your child. It's that you are very, very well aware of your own triggers well enough that you don't outsource your nervous system state to a 3-year-old, a 7-year-old, a 10-year-old. You're not doing that, right? So you're able to hold whatever it is in a grounded state. And when we think about business, so hiring and investing, this one I see a lot is like you bring someone on because you're overwhelmed with the work, which is absolutely necessary. But what you want to do is you hire because it actually fits the capacity plan that you made from a very clear regulated state, that you know that's the actual thing that's going to move the needle in your business. Revenues decisions. Reactive is that maybe a slow month triggers you to take on clients that aren't in your zone of genius just to hit the number. Proactive is that you actually have a filter. You already have your criteria of what's driving everything, and you're not going to shift. You're just going to put more focus on revenue generating activities. You avoid looking at your numbers because they spike your nervous system. You might not be consciously aware of that, but your body, you've created a loop in your mind that's so stressful, you're not even going to look in it. So you've gone to avoidance. versus you have done some work, you're grounding yourself before you get into looking at your numbers, thinking about taxes, thinking about all of that stuff, and you have a very scheduled time to review everything from a very regulated state. So that is going to actually be the information that informs you instead of destabilizes you. So what I want to do is I want to give you some very practical tools that actually help you shift from being reactive being a reactive state to being in a proactive state. And this really sets the tone in your morning routine. So I'm curious. I think if you know me, you know that I am very against looking at things that cause too much cortisol in my body and in my brain right in the beginning of the morning. And so first we want to understand, how do we actually get into this like proactive baseline before the emails come in, before the decisions land, before you have to actually like make big decisions. Well, the first goal is to actually have this morning practice, a place that could be 10 minutes. I have an MP3 that I'm going to link here for you that gets you into this grounded state already, so that you're already starting your day from grounding. So there's a somatic element to this. So you are already getting calm and regulated in the morning. And from there, you can then set your intentions before you actually see what's coming in email, what's coming in DMs, text messages. All of those are very reactive. So the moment that you decide to go do that before you're calm, grounded, regulated, and have a plan, then you are already getting trapped into reactive mode. So that the first thing is download that MP3. It's a very grounded somatic tool that can support you in these decisions. And then setting your intentions before you open or do anything, right? What is it that is going to be happening today? What are you planning to do? How are you planning to even stay in a grounded state, right? Calling that out, calling those actual intentions out are so powerful and so potent. And then as decisions come, because you're busy, you got probably millions of decisions, you got 66,000 thoughts a day, probably some of those are decisions, is like, how do you review your decisions from a regulated state? And so this is practicing our mind-body connection techniques that can be anything from just doing box breath for 5 minutes to feeling and doing a body scan, to just grounding yourself and becoming aware of the senses, of your voice, of the outside senses that are actually happening, right? So you can look somewhere, you can just notice a color, you focus on that. It's just they're very easy ways for you to get grounded. And then I always like to do one actual challenge is like, okay, well, we always know that we're wanting to operate in proactive states. So how do you make one proactive decision before noon? Something maybe that you've been putting off, that doesn't require courage, that requires something that you've been maybe putting off that requires courage, but it doesn't require urgency. A pitch you haven't sent, a boundary you haven't set, a conversation you've been avoiding. Reactive leaders will wait until it is the last minute to do those things. Proactive leaders in that state are operating from that state of, let's get going, let's make this happen, let's get ourselves forward and faster in a calm, grounded, regulated way. So that is, three very easy things that you can do. And it all starts with your morning routine, which you should definitely download that MP3. It's a beautiful, beautiful practice that you can do. So imagine that something happens tomorrow. Maybe it's a conversation, maybe it's looking at your numbers, maybe it's the end of this long week and you are actually ready just to let things go. And you're feeling all of a sudden that you feel kind of tense and you feel this like movement in your body because just something happened and you notice that there's this reaction, but actually you become aware of that reaction because you are aware of the things that are happening in your body. You're aware of your feelings. You're aware of your emotions. And you take that awareness to actually call it out, to call this out and to say, you know what? I'm becoming emotionally triggered. I'm becoming reactive in the way that I'm making a decision, and I'm going to shift that. And it just, that moment of awareness, that pause where you catch yourself in the middle of the pattern is a big shift in your leadership, is a big shift in how you're not only leading others, but you're leading yourself. And this is what I mean about being able to talk about the nervous system of money. It's everything about yourself. It's about you leading. It's about you showing up in the most grounded way that you possibly can so that you can achieve the goals that you want, that you can achieve the dreams. If you found this episode valuable, please leave me a comment. Please let me know how this has impacted you, what shifts you're able to make, because this is the stuff that lights me up. Thank you so much. And if you haven't, please subscribe to the podcast. And if you really, really feel like it, please give this a 5-star review so this can reach more people, more leaders, so we can make a bigger impact in the world, not only for ourselves, but others and the people that we are leading. Until next week, I'll talk to you soon.